Hello chess friends! In this video I have something very special for you. It's the first tournament game that Magnus Carlsen ever played. The year is 1999, Carlsen is only 8 years of age, and he enters the youngest division of the Norwegian Chess Championship, which is for those under 11 years old. Now at this point he's been playing chess for a few years already, but had not yet begun to take the game very seriously, which you will see reflected in his play. After we look at this round 1 game, we'll briefly take a look at his round 2 game from the same tournament. Then I'll show you one of his games from the following year, just so you can see how rapid his improvement was once he started playing tournament chess. So stick around for that, it's going to blow you away. So without any further delay, let's get into this very first tournament game of Magnus Carlsen's. Carlsen has the white pieces, his opponent's name is Rand Jelovic, and for the first move of his tournament career, Carlsen chooses d4. We get e5 from black, known as the England gambit. It's not known to be very sound, so Carlsen just goes ahead and takes the free pawn on e5. Knight c6 from black, threatening to regain the pawn, so Carlsen defends with the bishop. f6 from black. Carlsen's best move would probably be to defend with the knight, but instead he takes on f6, and this just kind of helps his opponent get another piece into the game, with queen takes f6, dual threats, queen takes f4, and also looking at the b2 square. So Carlsen's best defense would probably be something like queen c1, defending both. But sadly, Carlsen misses the threat to b2 and plays queen d2. And after queen takes b2 by his opponent, there is no good way to save this rook. If queen c3 was possible, this would work because the rook is defended by the queen, knight's defending the queen. But here, black would have bishop to b4, pinning the queen to the king, bishop's defended by the queen. Carlsen does not play queen c3. I don't even think he's aware of that idea. He plays queen to e3 check. And now his opponent makes the wrong move. Correct here is bishop e7 because it retains the possibility of bishop to b4 if Carlsen were to try this queen c3 defense. But his opponent plays knight e7. And here Carlsen would be able to play queen c3 and save his rook. There's no bishop b4. But unfortunately Carlsen misses that move and he plays bishop to e5, blundering a piece. That e5 square is attacked by both the knight on e6 and the queen, but apparently his opponent misses this and forgets he has a knight on c6 and thinks he has to move his queen. So he just plays queen takes c2, and now maybe there's some hope for Carlsen. He's not going to lose his rook. He grabs the pawn on c7, that's a good move. Now we got knight b4 from black, uncovering a threat on the bishop and also threatening knight d5. That would be a fork. So Carlsen makes the best move here. He plays knight c3, develops a piece, blocks the queen's access to his bishop, and also defends against knight to d5 if black were to play that. Knight takes d5 just wins a piece because this knight's pinned to the king. So his opponent plays knight to a6. Carlsen again plays the best move, rook to c1, attacking the queen. Queen goes to b2. Now here the engine says Carlsen is actually winning, and he should continue with something like rook b1, hitting the queen again, or bishop d6 is fine, getting this bishop out of danger. Instead, he plays queen to e5, defending his bishop, but unfortunately hanging his rook on c1. His opponent sees this, takes the free rook. Carlsen has to put his knight in the way to block the check, and now his opponent gets a second piece. So now Carlsen is 2 pieces down, a rook and a minor piece, but he plays on. He does not give up yet. King d8, unpinning the knight, and we have some developing moves. And then we got this queen g5 check from Carlsen. This looks like an attempt to trick his opponent. It's not good to trade pieces when you're down in material, but I think Carlsen is hoping that his opponent will be focused on this check and not notice that his queen is also in danger. Unfortunately, his opponent notices that and just trades queens. So this has not helped Carlsen getting more pieces off the board. Bishop b4 check. Carlsen goes to e2, knight f4 check, king to f3. Rook to f8, setting up the possibility of a discovered check once this knight moves. Carlsen plays knight takes h7. Okay, so he's grabbing a pawn, he's threatening the rook. Apparently his opponent didn't realize his rook was under attack, and he just goes ahead with his discovered check, which Carlsen just shuts down by taking the rook with his knight. And after bishop takes f8, Carlsen grabs a knight. So now Carlsen is only a piece down, so there is hope. We have knight takes d5, Carlsen gets his bishop into the game. We have some one-move threats going on. And eventually, Carlsen gets his rook into a bad situation. We have this move, rook to c5, bishop b7, threatening to win the knight if this rook is forced to move. Carlsen misses that, plays bishop f5, hitting this pawn, but now after bishop d6, Carlsen must either lose his rook or lose the knight. He chooses to move his rook away, counterattacking the knight on the a2. Unfortunately, bishop takes d5 comes with check and defends the knight. So Carlsen is simply 2 pieces down yet again. We have a trade of bishops. Knight attacks the rook. Rook d2 attacking the bishop. Bishop moves, but now Carlsen grabs a pawn. Attacking the bishop, it moves, he grabs a second pawn. After a5, we get rook g5. Just keeps attacking the bishop. The bishop keeps moving and allowing Carlsen to grab pawns. Now black only has 1 pawn left. Carlsen still has these 2 connected passed pawns. If Carlsen could somehow win this last pawn, he might be able to survive this. Because let's say the rooks come off the board and black's just left with a knight and a bishop, especially if white has these 2 pawns. Even if white had no pawns, that's difficult to checkmate with only a knight and a bishop. So there is definitely some hope for Carlsen. But unfortunately, black does not allow Carlsen to win this pawn, and he starts pushing it at the right moment, a4. And black plays very well here. Carlsen knows he needs to get a piece in front of the pawn. Then knight c2 hits the rook goes to a2. Then black's rook comes into the action, rook a4 check, the king moves, now we got knight b4. Forking the king and rook. King c3. Did Carlsen see this fork? I don't know. But he will get a piece out of this. It's not just a free rook for black, because after knight takes a2 check, there's king b3. He's going to get either the rook or the knight. His opponent wisely hangs on to his rook, and after king takes a2, his opponent starts to grab Carlsen's remaining pawns. The king goes to a1, rook takes g2. Carlsen makes his only legal move, king b1, and now this is a checkmate in 2 moves. Black finds the right move, a2 check. Carlsen plays king a1, which allows bishop f6 checkmate. If he would have played king c1, that also allows a mate in 1 with the promotion of the pawn. That's checkmate. So a little bit of a rough start for Carlsen in his first tournament game, but you could definitely see perseverance from Carlsen, even in a losing position, attempting to trick his opponent and winning some of his material back. He could have turned this game around, but unfortunately his opponent was skillful enough to convert the winning position. In round 2 of the same tournament, Carlsen this time has the black pieces. His opponent's name is Svensson. We get e4 from white. Carlsen plays the Sicilian defense. So we get this line with bishop c4. And Carlsen chooses to fianchetto his bishop. And after knight c3, d6 from Carlsen. His opponent moves his bishop twice in the opening. Carlsen plays what is not the best move here. Something like bishop d7, breaking the pin on your knight would be good, but instead Carlsen plays knight to f6. His opponent could now play e5 with a good position. If you take the pawn, then the knight takes. There's the threat to win some material on c6, and if you do something about that, let's say bishop d7, white can capture multiple times on c6 and land black with a shattered pawn structure. That would have been best for white, but instead of playing e5, white plays bishop takes c6 right away. Carlsen recaptures. And now b3 from white, a horrible move. You don't want to start to open this diagonal when the black bishop is opposite your rook like that. Carlsen here castled, but he could have immediately played knight takes e4, winning a pawn. Of course, if the knight recaptures, you're going to win the rook. But Carlsen chooses to castle first, and after bishop a3, at this moment he chooses to take on e4. This is still a good move for black, though not as good as it would have been a move earlier. Now here, white should play knight takes e4, and the best move for black here is not so obvious. See if you can spot it. Carlsen's best move here would be queen to a5. You of course don't want to capture the rook, because after queen takes a1, white has got 2 minor pieces for the cost of his rook. That's not a favorable trade for black. Instead you want to go queen to a5, attacking this bishop. White has no good way to save that bishop without giving up this rook, because that bishop doesn't have anywhere to go. If you move the bishop to c1, well, black gets a free rook. You've blocked the protection by your queen. If you defend the bishop with the queen, we got bishop takes a1, and the queen recaptures, and then we get the bishop. So the best move would be to just move the rook out of danger and let black take the bishop. But white did not go down this road with knight takes e4. Instead, Carlsen's opponent played rook to b1, which is a horrible blunder, because it allows Carlsen to win a second pawn by capturing on c3. And not only that, after bishop takes c3, Carlsen captures with the correct piece. After white recaptures, d takes c3, he's got knight takes c3 with the fork. So not only is he getting another pawn, he's also going to win the exchange. The queen moves, Carlsen takes the rook, queen takes. Now Carlsen is the exchange and 2 pawns up. We got e5 from Carlsen here, central control, queen to b2, c3. And at this moment here, where white attacks Carlsen's bishop, Carlsen plays a move which is impressive for his age. Bishop to e2. If white moves the rook, then of course there's bishop takes f3, and after g takes f3, look whose pawn structure around their king has been shattered. Of course, white has queen takes e2, which is what his opponent plays, but this takes protection off of the bishop on a3. Carlsen captures the bishop. So it's a nice way to simplify the position. White gets to grab this pawn on d6, but then Carlsen uncorks c4. Discovered attack on the rook, which his opponent totally misses and takes the pawn on c4. Carlsen grabs the rook, and now it's just completely over. Carlsen's got 2 rooks versus a knight, easily winning. Knight takes e5. Carlsen pins the knight. White defends with f4. Carlsen starts doubling his rooks here. He could have just played f6 and won the knight straight away. Not sure if he was aware of that move or not, but after rook e7, he's still totally winning here. And he decides to simplify, grabbing a knight and a pawn for the rook. Good practical decision. White gives his king a little escape square there. Carlsen puts his rook on the open file. Now h4, maybe some desperado attacking attempt. And here Carlsen plays queen to e2. I think most players would prefer queen to e1 check, forcing the trade of queens. And after this, mopping up white's queenside pawns and winning the game is a very simple task. But Carlsen allows white to keep his queen on the board. And plays rook e4, attacking the pawn on c4. There's no perpetual check by white. King g7, he puts his king to h2, grabbing another pawn on c3, and after g3, Carlsen is starting to think about checkmating. He plays rook to e2 check, king goes to h3, queen to c5, looking to come to f5 perhaps. Queen to c8 guards that square. Now we got h5, taking away the only possible move for white's king. Now it has no moves. g4 played by white, and this allowed a checkmate in one move. Queen to e3 check would be mate. Carlsen misses it and plays queen to f2 instead, but is able to checkmate a couple moves later. This queen h2 check, king here, f5 check, king f3, and queen to f2 checkmate. So a nice recovery from Carlsen, scoring the first tournament win of his career in round 2 of this tournament, with some play that is pretty impressive for an 8-year-old, I have to say. So now we fast forward to about 1 year and 5 months later. Magnus Carlsen is now 9 years old, and the opponent he is facing in this game is rated 2170. So the fact that he's being paired with an opponent of that caliber means there has obviously been a significant increase in his playing strength. So let's take a look at this game and see if it's evident. Carlsen has the black pieces. His opponent, rated almost 2200, plays e4. We have a king's pawn opening, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4 from white. Carlsen plays knight f6, and now knight to g5. His opponent's testing his knowledge to see if Carlsen knows how to respond to this attack on the f7 pawn by the knight and the bishop. Carlsen plays the correct move. He knows his theory. d5. E takes d5, knight a5. Hits this bishop on c4. White delivers a check. Carlsen blocks with c6. D takes c6, pawn takes d6. The bishop's again hit. Goes to e2, and now Carlsen kicks the knight away with h6. He has played correctly, and now white decides to put his knight on h3, which is an interesting decision. It gives Carlsen the option to take with the bishop and damage white's pawn structure. He doesn't do that right away though. He opts for development, bishop to c5, and now after white castles, he chooses to take the knight. Now that the king side is weak with the castled king there, this looks kind of bad for white, but white does still have the extra pawn, and this diagonal, it can be defended. Black no longer has a light squared bishop. White's actually okay here. Carlsen plays knight to e4. He's looking to reposition the knight. White gives it a kick with d3, and now knight to g5, targeting that weak pawn. White just chooses to give up the pawn. Goes for development instead of some dubious defensive move with the king. Bishop to e3, knight takes h3 check. The king moves, hitting the knight. Knight to f4 check. King moves again. Now knight to b7, since this bishop needed protection. Bishop to f3 by white. Hitting c6, queen b6 defends. Knight d2, Carlsen castles. Knight to c4, hitting the queen on b6. Queen to c7, defending e5. Queen to d2, putting some pressure on that f4 knight. Carlsen captures the bishop on e3. F takes e3, knight d5, queen g2, hitting d5 twice, with potential checkmating ideas if rook g1 is played. Carlsen knows he's okay here though. He goes rook a to d8. If now white were to play rook g1, f5, with some lateral defense from the queen, black is just fine. Instead, white plays queen to g3, attacking e5 with 2 pieces. Rook d to e8 defends. Now bishop e4 played by white. There's some potential threats here. If white could ever get the queen to f5, it could be very dangerous. Here Carlsen plays knight to d6, attacking the bishop. Looks kind of good on the surface, but after rook g1, threatening checkmate, Carlsen now needs to defend with g5. A weakening move. If you play g6 here, there's of course the bishop sacrifice. After the pawn takes, queen takes g6 check is going to lead to a disaster. After something like this, the queen's going to have to go in the way. And queen takes, king takes, and then white can gobble up the knight on d6 with a winning position. That's why g5 was necessary. And now white plays knight takes d6, missing the best move. Queen to h4 was actually strongest. This pawn's pinned, you can't take the queen. Threatening to take on h6. Maybe black's best move is to take out that dangerous bishop. But after the pawn takes and then this knight moves, you got rook takes g5 check. And if the pawn captures, queen takes g5, this is going to end in checkmate after something like this when the other rook comes into play. Like so. So you don't want to go down that road. At this point here, black would just have to let white capture his knight. He would need to add some defense to the king side with something like rook to e6. And then pawn takes, and black only has a pawn for the lost piece and has a losing position. So white could have won easily with that, but knight takes d6 played instead, queen takes d6, and then rook a to f1. And white does have an advantage here, but black has some chances. Best move according to the computer is knight to e7, but Carlsen blunders with queen to e6. Here white plays queen to f3, giving up the advantage. If white would have played bishop f5, this would have been pretty crushing. Let's say you go queen d6, leaving this pawn undefended. There is again queen to h4 with the threat of rook takes g5, which will be very nasty. If you try to do something like this, then this pawn falls, you block the queen's defense. If instead you try to keep protection of that g5 pawn by playing queen to e7, now there's c4 kicking the knight away, and then again queen h4. This time h6 is under attack. Try to defend with the king. Again, there's rook takes g5 check like this. Queen to h7, defended by the bishop. You try to defend with the queen. There's rook takes g5. You could take with the queen, but in this case rook to g1 will win the queen, pinned to the king. So that's how white could have won. But queen to f3 gives up the advantage. Now Carlsen wisely plays the best move, knight to e7, threatening f5, which would trap the bishop. So white plays queen to f6, and this just leads to a dead equal position after the queens are traded. The game continues. There's the trade of the minor pieces, leading to a drawn rook endgame. A pair of rooks come off the board. And then right about here, Carlsen blunders with f5. White could have won with the move c6. And after rook c7, there's this variation where white's pawns are just too quick. And there's actually this move after king e7. What would you play as white right here? White wins with rook takes a7. And after the rook takes b6, these two passed pawns on the 6th rank are too much for the black rook. Black cannot stop one of those pawns from promoting. You see something like this, this, and this. That's how white could have won. But instead, there was b4. Now Carlsen plays e4. We got b5. Carlsen plays f4. And now white blunders with king g2. Best here would have been this line c6. And black can only draw with f takes e3, allowing his rook to be captured, because after e2, we're going to see something like this and this, and there's going to be a perpetual check, I believe. The game will end in a draw. Black will keep checking the white king. That was the best line. King g2 is too slow, and after f3 check, the king goes here. Rook d2 check, king back to g1. Carlsen misses the win. He goes for a perpetual check. He just goes back and forth like this. The engine said he could have won with rook g2 check. Now if the king goes to h1, there's rook to b2, threatening checkmate. So the king has to go back, and then we go rook takes b5, grabbing the pawn. Black's still got his passed pawn protected. Black has a winning position here. Let's say you go king f1 instead. Here there's g4, and you get this line where black takes here. If you just go for the queen as white, there's going to be g3, and there's going to be a checkmate. The queen is not quick enough. And then there's the option of moving the king, but then g3, and then we get something like this. Rook checks, king d2, g2, and again white can get the queen, but in this case there's another checkmate. So Carlsen could have actually won with that sequence of moves. But he opted for the draw, which is an impressive result for a 9-year-old against a 2170 rated player. So you can see what incredible progress he has made in only a year and 5 months since his first tournament game. In this year 2000, he actually gained 1,000 rating points. At the beginning of the year, he was rated 900, and by the end of the year, he was rated 19 something. So in chess, it's not so much about your skill at any given moment. What's more important is how fast you are learning, especially when you're a child. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these early games from the young Magnus Carlsen. Please subscribe to the channel for more awesome chess videos coming soon.